President Joe Biden gave an interview to ProPublica, John Harwood specifically, and there were a few moments that I found interesting. We'll take a look at here, starting off with Biden addressing the current state of the threat to democracy. Where do things stand right now?
Since you gave your democracy speech in Philadelphia a year ago, we've had orderly midterm elections, no violence, and the beginning of legal accountability for former President Trump and other January 6th defendants, no civil unrest. Could the threat to democracy be smaller than you think?
Well, I think the opposite thing's happening, John. I think that...
Sorry, he answers it right on the nose, but let me, before showing that, point out, really, that's the bar? We haven't seen January 6th or a president try to overthrow democracy in 3 years. Is the threat gone now? Well, this is the upcoming election where everything's on the line, so no.
I think the opposite thing's happening, John. I think that this is sort of the last gasp, or maybe the first big gasp of the mega Republicans. And I think Trump has concluded that he has to win, and he'll pull out all the stops. I mean, the quotes he uses are just, I never thought I'd hear a president say some of the stuff he says. And so I think that, and you see what's happening in terms of what the mega Republicans are doing in the House. They don't make up a majority of the House, but they're bringing everything to a screeching halt.
So again, the framing of the question, a little bit weird, but Biden's answer is right. The fact that Trump's being held legally accountable is really good. The fact that he's being held accountable for numerous potential crimes, including one set being in relation to his attempts to overthrow our lawful democratic process. The accountability is good, but it does set up even more desperation for the movement of MAGA and Trump as an individual, thinking this election and Trump's ability or lack thereof to get his hands on power is what is going to decide if he is held legally accountable or not. And so everything is coming down to this. And when that is the feeling within a movement and for an individual who leads that movement, very dangerous things can take place because of the desperation. And we're seeing that with the threats that Trump has been making, as Biden referenced, the words he's been speaking on Truth Social and otherwise. He is desperate. He is terrified. And that is something that should in part terrify us, because so much rides on the 2024 election. And he knows that. We should know that as well. Then you have him getting asked about talking to MAGA members of your family and friends.
Yesterday, you want average Americans who share your concerns to engage, to stand up for American values. How would you advise those people who do share your concerns, but may be wary to about talking to a MAGA parent, neighbor, coworker? How would you advise them to do that?
Vote. Vote. Look, I was saying to my staff, I never thought I'd see a time when someone was worried about being on a jury because there may be physical violence against them if they voted the wrong way. I never thought that would happen. It's like maybe a mobster's case, right? I mean, think about that.
But a lot of average people think those are really difficult conversations to have with people and may be reluctant to engage.
Well, they are. And I think if you don't want to engage, you just act, you just do what you think is right. And part of that is just showing up.
It's an interesting response. He goes on to talk about more specifically talking with family and friends, but he took it twice there to a different place. Instead of just how do you talk nicely, which is something people are concerned with, and I get trying to have those conversations, and he addresses that. I'll play more of this in a moment. But that's even more important. You don't even have to engage. If you want to have a standard in your family that we take politics off the table, I find it impossible to do that, but I try my best with certain people. That's okay. But just make sure that doesn't mean that you disengage. Make sure that you still go vote, even if you don't have to tell your family and friends who you voted for. Because at some point, MAGA and the anti-democratic nature of MAGA and Trumpism will only become irrelevant when voters make it so. And if we can time and time again reject from power these figures, these dangerous and dishonest figures, eventually they will fade into irrelevance. And then maybe a more healthy political dialogue is possible. And so even if you don't feel comfortable talking, engaging, trying to convince, at least make sure you go vote and you convince people who can be convinced to go vote for the right people who stand for democracy, who stand for basic rights and the rule of law. Here's more from this portion.
Showing up. But I also think that we should be engaging people more and not be worried about our neighbor. Talk to them. Sit down and say, what do you think? Well, and not get in arguments, but say, this is what you say this, but how about this? And force people to get in a two-way conversation. But it's hard, John. But the biggest thing is, look.
So then if you are able to talk to people, then do it, make it happen. If you just can't, at least make sure that doesn't mean you get so annoyed with politics because of the arguments that you stop paying attention. That is the worst option. Hopefully my audience believes that. We have to stay motivated, for us at least, to act. And then if you have remaining energy and you do feel able to have these conversations, then engage. Talk to your neighbor, talk to your friend in a respectful manner, and try to understand, of course, and be understood, and have those dialogues. And maybe you move someone. It's possible. It's rare, but it's possible to move people toward a better political direction. It is funny. Because this is the job I do, and everyone who knows me knows that, there are a lot of people in my life that, you know how you kind of have that typical, whatever, you're talking to someone and you ask how their job's going, they ask how your job's going. There's a lot of people who won't even exactly ask any specifics about my day-to-day of my job because they're so frightened that it'll get into a political discussion. And right now, everything's so hot, they don't want to talk about politics. If they know they'll disagree with me. And I've tried to remind people, I can tell you how my day was, how I enjoyed the technical side of getting my work done when it comes to the job I do, without ranting about the political stories of the day. But it's true, as I experience every single day, that a lot of people are just terrified to even start the conversation. And I think if you can commit to staying calm, if you have an underlying respect for that person, then it can turn out all right. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show and get a bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.